honor of introducing one more speaker. Might be the last speaker. We don't know if there's one more who wants to speak, but first of all, now here it is Niels Harrit. Some of you might know him. He's known as a chemist from the University of Copenhagen, and he's one of the 9 scientists who found the nanothermite in the dust from the World Trade Center. I don't think he's going to speak that much about that today. I think he's going to speak about the lie, the deception in our society. But I won't speak anymore because Niels is here and the sound is working, so thank you, Niels.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I actually have a speech here. Dear fellow Bilderberg protesters, yes. Power is based on fear. And if you go through the last 60 years of Western history, you realize that it has been one long time of low-intensity terror and full-blown wars. So we have come to realize that war and terror are simply the means by which you rule on a greater scale. And as an old Chinese philosopher pointed out, all wars are based on deception. In our society, the war propaganda is channeled through the mainstream press. The media have carried an endless stream of lies to fool the soldiers to fight and to fool the people to pay. The Great Fear Society would not have been possible without the complicity of the media. The mainstream press also misinforms about the meeting taking place right now across the street. In spite of the fact that a Bilderberg meeting gathers the top power brokers in the Western countries, the media, to the extent that the event is mentioned at all, present it as a talking shop. They want us to believe that these powerful people take 3 days out of their precious time, fly around the globe, come to this place for an informal exchange of opinions, and uncommitted chat at the golf course. But there is no golf course on the Marriott Hotel Copenhagen, and not even a tour of the canal will be permitted by security. So we may deduce that the agenda is more sinister this time. At a 1991 meeting of the Bilderberg Group, David Rockefeller was quoted as saying, quote, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promise of discretion for 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated now and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries." This was David Rockefeller. Whoa. End of quote. Whoa. Whoa. That real decisions are indeed being taken in the Bilderberg Club was most explicitly revealed by former Secretary General of NATO, Willy Klaas, who in a radio interview in 2001 admitted that, quote, "Bilderberg attendees are mandated to implement decisions that are formulated during the annual conference of power brokers in their respective spheres of influence." End of quote. Those spheres of influence certainly include the media. If you are a journalist and want a job in the mainstream press, You must be ready to write and say what you're told to. You must be ready to shut up when you're told to. Manning of the editorial staffs of the mainstream media is a simple matter of social selection, Darwin style. If you cannot lie, there is no job for you. Lies and deception have become an integral, totally accepted feature of our culture, a state of collective mind. It has not always been quite like that. According to myth, a young George Washington confessed to cutting down a cherry tree by proclaiming, "I cannot tell a lie." The story is testament to how much respect Americans have for their cherished first president and honesty in general. If true, George Washington was a normal, decent person, since all normal, decent persons do not want to tell lies. We want to tell the truth. Likewise, no sane person wants to be lied to. Honesty is a fundamental quality, a natural urge of human nature.
Yes.
In particular, we do not want to be lied to by persons who, by destiny, fate, or political process, are supposed to take care of us, those being parents, public servicemen, superiors, or politicians. We want our governments and media to tell us the truth and to deliver justice.
Yes.
We want to believe them. So whenever there is discrepancy between what we are being told and reality, we have a problem, which, ironically, prompts us to lie to ourselves so we avoid the pain of being deceived. Simply, we deny it. We don't see it. The glass reaction is, though, of the population can lie without emotion. This applies to most, if not all, of today's leaders of society.
Yes. Yeah.
They don't feel a thing. They only consider which lie is the best from a strategic point of view. So does the press. They cover political events like covering a sports game. George Washington wouldn't stand a ghost of a chance in modern politics. And maybe John F. Kennedy was the last leader with some integrity. Today, by social selection, you simply do not get to the top of the power hierarchy if you cannot lie.
Yeah.
I will read you another quote from a well-known ruler of the not-too-distant past. Quote, "All this was inspired by the principle, which is quite true in itself, that in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility. Because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. It would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruth, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously." End of quote. Yes, as you may know, that was a quote from Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. And he went on to fabricate colossal untruth, distorting the truth infamously indeed, and thus paving the way to fascism and ultimately World War II. Since then, our society has been told an apparently endless number of such colossal untruths. The official account of 9/11 is a prime example.
Yes, here.
The attack on Afghanistan on October 7th, 2001, the attack on Iraq in 2003, and the global, never-ending war on terror are collectively called the 9/11 wars, since they are based on the premise that the United States was attacked by 19 young Muslim men on September 11, 2001. There is absolutely no forensic evidence, none, supporting this, the official conspiracy theory of 9/11. On the contrary, there are mountains of scientific hard evidence proving that it is false. Most obviously, it is an unambiguous conclusion from observations that the 3 skyscrapers which were destroyed in World Trade Center on 9/11 were taken down in controlled demolitions by means of explosives and incendiaries. I will elaborate a little on this, since the conclusion spans a fateful, fantastic arc through the history of science. Many of you may be aware that the third of the World Trade Center high-rises, the renowned Building 7, which was not hit by an airliner, came down in free-fall acceleration into its own footprint 7 hours after the collapses of the Twin Towers.
Please louder.
Fewer may know and recall that the fall of gravity was the subject of the very first systematic and quantitative experiments in science when Galileo Galilei in 1593 entertained the citizens of Pisa by throwing objects of different size out from the tilting tower and measuring their time of fall. Galileo's laws of gravity, later transformed into Newton's second law of motion, published in 1687, together, of course, with the first and the third. There have been no exceptions from Newton's laws of motion for more than 300 years, so Isaac has never lost a game. But according to the official technical report, World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed due to gravity following random small office fires. This hypothesis violates Newton's laws and the no less fundamental principles of conservation of energy. There is no way around this, which means that the official narrative about the 9/11 attacks is false.
Yes, yes.
And we have been taken to the walls by deception. In 1633, Galileo was put on trial by the Inquisition for heresy. Not because he had studied gravity free fall, but because he had written in a book that the Earth revolves around the Sun, not the other way around as generally believed at the time. This statement was a threat to the Catholic Church, which considered St. Peter's Square the center of the universe and universal power. Galileo told the truth based on evidence and observations, and he was framed as a dangerous extremist. At the trial, in his shirt only, Galileo, who had just turned 70, was forced on his knees to swear and to secure the proper course of proceedings. Instruments of torture were on display in the corner of the hall. As we know, torture has come back, again as a tool of power. Guantanamo is still there, and the key claims of the 9/11 Commission report were based on torture. They didn't even try to conceal it. But the means of clashing down and dissent are more varied, more subtle, and more sophisticated in our societies compared with the 17th century. Academia and the arts have been gagged by legislation and funding strategies which have worked with frightening efficiency over the last 12 years. And framing Speaker of Truth and other dissidents as dangerous extremists have become a standard refrain in the mainstream press. Many scholars have pointed out now that our Western society is in the same critical stage as in the 1920s. The financial and economic indicators certainly show sinister similarities. This is the kind of stuff they're discussing now at the Bilderberg meeting. We don't know the cause and time of scale of this coming economic collapse. But in any case, we are on the verge of social changes of an order and magnitude without precedence in Western history. The New World Disorder is coming up. Thank you. It is going to be ugly, but we don't know where it may end. It may go to either side. One side is called corporate tyranny. There is no word yet for the alternative. But imagine a society with real democracy and genuine freedom. Freedom from lies and freedom from fear. Imagine national constitutions which make lying to the public by politicians a criminal act. Really, that's all it takes. Decisive for the outcome of the coming storm will be the level of public enlightenment. And the decision to launch a war or not to launch a war is entirely a choice of humans, that kind of humans who are invited to a Bilderberg meeting. It has been said that the truth is the first casualty of war. Rather, we have learned in later years that wars are preceded by lies. But this, my friends, these are the good news. Because it means that they have to fool the people before they launch a war. If public pressure didn't count, there would be no reason to cheat. If the people of power did not fear the people of the street, there would be no reason to put reflecting tape on the window of the Marriott Hotel. If they didn't care, they wouldn't bother. But they do. They hide. And that's why we are here out in the open. Therefore, thank you. Therefore, the best defense against war is the truth. You can have dishonesty without war, but you cannot have war without dishonesty. There is no such thing as an honest war. And since 9/11 was such an obvious lie, they really messed up this time. Since 9/11 was such a blatant lie, it represents a unique and unprecedented window of opportunity to end the permanent state of war. In Riverside Church, New York City, 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The time comes when silence is betrayal." Rightfully, you may say that this moment has come many times over since the killing of Dr. King. But never have his words been more true than after 9/11. No peace without truth. 9/11 is key. Thank you.